Are we live? Or is the page dead or something? I don't know. We're live. Okay, so Twitch is being Twitch and stuff like that. Right, so this is the reason why you need React to keep the page in sync with the actual state. Right. This is why you need React, am I right? So anyway, hello everyone and welcome to yet another recreational programming session with Mr. Azuzin. Let's make a little bit of an announcement and officially start the stream as usual. Right, so red circle live on Twitch. And what are we doing today on Twitch.television website? Today we're adding volume control to Mutualizer. I'm gonna give the link to where we do all that, twitch.tv/starting, and I'm gonna ping everyone who's interested in being pinged. And there we go, the stream has officially started. So today we continue developing Mutualizer, right? So which is the music visualizer that we started to develop some time ago. I'm gonna give the link to the chat, right? And for people who's watching on YouTube, it's gonna be in the description as usual. So let's take a look at it. So I'm gonna actually quickly start this entire thing. Mutualizer, there we go. Look how fast the application has started. This is unbearable. This is a bad UX. Like, look. What the fuck is that? Why is it so snappy? It's getting too disarray. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's difficult for me to use this kind of application. It confuses me. So, anyway, I'm sorry. Right, so just a second. So Mutualizer. Music, and let's put some music in here. I suppose I'm gonna just drag and drop this entire shit. Look how quickly it loaded it up. This is such a bad UX. This is unbearable. That's impossible to use. Like, holy shit, dude. Right. Look how quickly it recomputes its layout. It's fucking disgusting, I swear to God. Look how quickly it goes to full screen. It's just like, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. Right, what the fuck is this shit? Fuck you, your native applications are shit. You need to use Electron to slow down your application because that's better UX. That is better UX. Anyway, so yeah, essentially, recently we added this full screen button. And one of the things I would also like to have in here, like in a similar fashion, is some sort of like a volume control, right? Some sort of a volume control somewhere here. And the way I want the volume control to behave is essentially I want it to be originally in this sort of like a collapsed form. It's going to be similar to YouTube, right? You know how in YouTube it works, right? So it's sort of in collapsed form, but when you hover over that icon, it expands into a slider, and then you can click a slider and just drag it around, and that controls the volume. Then you basically hover out. Is that a word that you can use? Like sort of basically go out of the control and it collapses again. Right, so I'd like to implement something like that. We can even try to maybe draw. Right, so initially we're going to have, just a second, some sort of a volume control, right? So, and so what's going to be the icon of the volume control? So it's going to be something like this, right? So this is going to be something like that, and you have this kind of thing. So this is the volume. So this is the sort of the first state. When you hover over this entire thing, it gets expanded. It gets expanded into something like this, right? And then you can have something like that, right? Right, and then you have this sort of slider in here, which is like some sort of a circle, which then can drag around. And when you're done, it goes back to here, right? It goes back to here. So depending on the sort of volume, right? So the current volume, we also probably want to change the icon in 3 different sort of stages, right? So so the no volume at all is going to be something like this. Then like a little bit of a volume is probably going to be something like this. And the full volume is going to be something like this. right? So there's going to be 3 states, and we'll need to draw icons for all of the states, right? And depending on the percentage in here, we will just have to pick 3 different icons. Maybe for no volume at all, this is going to be something like this, right? Who knows? I think it's a pretty good idea to just indicate, because maybe you're going to put volume somewhere here, but it's still going to be playing something, so it's not completely mute, it's not completely 0. So, and because of that, it's going to be displayed without this cross, right? So because of that, I think there's going to be 4 of such icons, right? So the no volume whatsoever is just like a cross in here or something like that, right? So there's 4 stages of this entire thing. So that's basically the idea, right? So that's basically the idea. And it's going to be literally the same icon of the same shape, of the same size, but on the other side, right? On the other side. But when you hover over it, it's going to be extended and stuff like that, right? So yesu. So that's the idea for today. So the last time when I was trying to implement this icon, it took me 2 hours. So this is a more complicated element, so I expect it to take roughly the same amount of time, just because I get a little bit better at developing these kind of elements, all right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I already closed this entire thing, so let me start it and maybe put some music in here. All right, so I'm gonna put it like that. Point of no return. Let's also put this thing like that. Okay, so that's fine. So let's keep it in here, right? So because we're gonna be, you know, working on that. So I'm gonna go to the plug.c. Where do we have a full screen button, right? So where do we have a full screen button? I don't really see that. Where is it? So full screen, a full screen button. Okay, so where do we call the full screen button? So I think that's very important. So we call it in 2 places, and I think in both of the cases, we'll have to also render the volume control, the volume slider. Right. So volume. Why did you lag? Volume slider. Right. And I suppose I think volume slider also should accept the preview boundary. The preview boundary is basically this rectangle, and the position of the full screen button is computed based on that specific boundary, right? So based on that specific boundary. And I have a feeling that for volume slider, it also going to be like that, right? I think it makes sense to keep it like that as well. Right. So let's go to full screen button, and then in here, we're going to have volume slider, and we're going to have a rectangle, which is preview boundary, right? So which is a preview boundary. So with the preview boundary, we are essentially constructing this entire thing. So we have a full button, full screen button size, and I have a feeling that these parameters are going to be the same for the volume, right? It's going to be the button size and the margin the same, but from the left side. Right, it's going to be the same, but from the left side. Because of that, I feel like maybe this has to be something like, how to say that, constants, right? So full screen button size. But the problem here is that I need to come up with a different prefix for this thing, because this is going to be used for both volume slider and the full screen button, right? So maybe I'm gonna call it something like hot button. I think that makes a little bit more sense. So, and yeah, so let me go through all of these things. I'm gonna do full screen button size, and I'm gonna rename it with hot button size, right? So hot button size. There we go. And full screen button margin is going to be hot button margin. There we go. So I'm going to do it like that. So, okay, so here we have full screen button boundary. We're going to use the same thing in here, but we actually need to align that from the left. Right, and to align it from the left, it's actually way easier than from the right. We just have to add the hot bottom margin, right? So we just add this entire thing. After we created this boundary, we can just go ahead and draw the rectangle, right? So we can just draw the rectangle, and we also need to pick the color, right? So we also need to pick the color, and the color in here is the color full screen button hover over. So we'll need to come up with a different name for all of these parameters in here. Right, but before we do that, I think we need to test this entire thing and see if it even works, right? So let's actually see if it even works. All right, so I'm gonna hot reload, and there you go, we have a button on the right side now. When we hover over this entire thing, we'll need to expand it. We'll need to expand it a little bit. All right, so let me see. So color full screen button hover over. So I think the time has come to actually rename this entire stuff, right? So we're gonna call it HUD button background and HUD button hover over, right? And they're the same as the track buttons, right? So we basically synchronize the colors between these two things, right? So that's totally fine. And so full screen timer secs, which is seconds, not what you thought. Right, so we also gonna call it HUD timer secs. So yeah, I'm just thinking that I usually like prefix special thing in here, but I don't prefix anything in here because it's not a color. So maybe secs should be first, because here I use like measure units as the prefix, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it doesn't really matter as of right now. So let's go to the compilation errors and just simply rename everything accordingly. So this is the HUD. So what's the next one? HUD. HUD. I hope you can actually see everything well, not HUD, but HUD. Yeah, HUD. Timer seconds. By the way, so the timer is needed when you do full screen, right? So when you do full screen and you go into idle mode, this thing disappears, as you can see. So that's basically the amount of seconds after which it starts to disappear. Then you move around and it just like appears again, and you can go back, right? So this is basically what's going on here. So it's seconds. So what's the next thing? This one is going to be HUD. Button hover over. So what else do we have? Okay, so that's fine. So we're totally done with all of that. So interestingly, we do the timing. Okay, so the timer, I baked the timer inside of the full screen button. I literally baked it inside of the of this thing. So what I'll have to do, I'll have to share this timer between full screen button and the volume control, right? Because I want the volume control also in the full screen mode to be available for a certain amount of seconds, right? Available for a certain amount of seconds, and then disappear on idle after 1 second. So that makes sense, right? So because of that, I think the timer has to be outside this entire stuff. Furthermore, all right, so maybe we want to return Boolean in here, and I think I originally returned Boolean and then I get rid of that. But the problem is that if we want to move the timer outside of this component, we need to be able to know that the button is hovered over. So returning Boolean just indicates whether you clicked this thing or not, right? So, but we need to be able to know whether it's clicked or hovered. Clicked or hovered or nothing. So this is quite important. Maybe because of that, we want to introduce some sort of an enumeration, button state, right? Some sort of a button state, and we're gonna call it B. None, right? So everything's okay. So nothing was clicked or nothing happened. And then BS hover over, right? So hover over, and then BS clicked, hover over or BS clicked. And this is what we want to return in here. So button state. Right, and depending on what happened in there, we're gonna just return different things. So this kind of stuff will require a little bit of refactoring, right? So yeah, as you can see in here, we have hover over, which is nice. So, and we also actually we have this kind of stuff as two booleans, right? We have this kind of stuff as two booleans, and we indicate a click. Yeah, so here we go. So yeah, this is where we indicate a click. So a boolean clicked, boolean clicked, and essentially we can, yeah, if we're going to be factoring this kind of stuff out, what we have to do, we have to say hover over and is button released, right? So this is what we have. What's funny is that, you know what, like hover over and click, like if you clicked, it kind of implies hover over. Wouldn't it be better to actually make this sort of like a beat mask? Well, I mean, if you just do 1, 2, it's already automatically a beat mask. Right, so and essentially, hover over is going to be 1, and clicked is going to be 1, 0. So if they were hovered over and clicked simultaneously, the result is going to be 1, 1, so to speak. So yeah, so essentially we can actually return an integer, and then we can indicate some sort of a state, right? Some sort of a state which is initially 0, and yeah. So we already have hover over and clicked, and at the end, when we return out of this entire stuff, right, when we return out of this entire stuff, so here we are essentially doing something that should have been done outside, right? So I'm going to just remove that. So here we're checking whether we are in a full screen and we're not hover over. So this is the logic that should be handled outside of the button, not inside of it. Not inside of it. So when we return in here, so here we don't return anything. Okay. So and essentially hover over, right? So this is the first bit, and then clicked is going to be the second bit, right? And I want to combine them together, That way, when you're using this function, you can have something like state full screen button, right, some sort of a boundary, and then you can easily check whether it's just hover over or just clicked, right, or none, right? So in the easiest way, if you want to do that inside of sort of like a condition, you can always do something like BS clicked, so it's sort of like a beat mask, so you can do it like that. We just return 2 bits in here. Whether it's a good idea or not, I'm not 100% sure, but essentially what we need to do, we need to return 2 booleans in here. What's the easiest way to return 2 booleans in C? It just return it as a beat mask. Right. We could have maybe just created a structure. So button state. Right, so button state boolean clicked and hover over. We could have done it like that. So, but in C, it is more common to use these beat masks for some reason. I don't really know why, to be fair. Because the compiler is, if you just return structure, I'm pretty sure the compiler is just going to optimize all of that stuff anyway. Right, and if you return this kind of thing, button state, right, so you still can use it like if full screen button, preview boundary, clicked. It's even more like readable, I think. It's even more readable. What do you guys think? So what should we use? Like a return structure with booleans, or maybe flags or something like that? So I don't really know. But it's not going to be, maybe using like a masks is a little bit more optimized. So flags, like people say in the chat that flags are a little bit better. People like beat flags instead. Okay, so we can do it like that then. And this is going to be like this. So maybe on top of that, since all of that is integer, I might as well just return an integer here as well. What about bit fields? Bit fields are, for me at least, are associated with a huge pain in the ass, right? So they also kind of work, like, I can't understand them, honestly. I just, like, I can never understand them. They're so weird. Right, anyway. So let me find some stuff in here. So where is the full screen le button? Yeah, this is where we do all of that. This is where we do all of that. And essentially we can int state, all right, and if state bs clicked, we just flip-flop the full screen, right? We just flip-flop the full screen, like so. And if we are in full screen, we are currently in full screen, okay. So, and we're not hover overing, right? We're not hover overing. We're gonna do this kind of stuff. If state bs hover over, like so, what we have to do, if the mouse was not moved, if the mouse is moved, we reset the full timer, then we subtract the full timer thingy, right? So essentially, if the full timer, full screen timer, or maybe I should actually start calling it hot timer. If the hot timer is less or like greater than 0, if it's greater than 0, we're rendering all of that stuff. We're rendering the volume slider, we're rendering the full screen button and stuff like that. And if the button was clicked in here, the full screen button was clicked, we flip the full screen and stuff like that. Right, if the hot timer is greater than this thing and we're not hovering over the button, right, we're not hovering over the button, but we are moving around, we keep resetting the timer. And if we're not, we're just doing it like this. We're just doing it like that. And that should automatically do the thing I want it to do. Right, and the full screen button in here, it doesn't really matter. All right, so I can do bs clicked. If it's clicked, we just do p full screen button. Right, so yeah, I'm basically, the reason why it takes so much effort is because I'm separating the logic from the button, right? So before the logic was inside of the button, so it takes a little bit of an effort to separate all of that. So, but it is what it is, right? So like it is needed, because this kind of timer thing, it has to be shared between two buttons now. So you can't keep it inside of the button. So it's really, really necessary. Right, this is really, really necessary to actually separate all of that stuff from it. Otherwise, it's not going to work exactly as expected. So sometimes you need to do the work. Sometimes you need to do the work. So that's what I'm saying, essentially. So this stuff, this is the logic that I was trying to separate out of this entire stuff, right? And yeah, so this one does not really matter, so because it's also a logic. So full screen button is actually rather interesting, right? So you take the mouse position, because it's going to be used somewhere down there. Then you build the boundary for your button, you figure out whether it's hover over situation and whether it's clicked. And whether it's clicked, it always depends on hover over, right? So because if it's not hover over and when you release the button, it's not going to be registered as a click. Right, so in the color is also depends on whether we are in hover over state or not. Right, then we do the rendering and then we just return the current state, right? So we just basically compose both of the bits, right? We compose both of the bits and there you go, here is the state, and that's what we have in here. Right, so this is just like the button state. Oh, we can try to compile this entire thing and see like what is going on here. So semicolon, we forgot the semicolon, nothing particularly special. So the high timer, I actually put it somewhere here. I didn't think it's a good idea, so let's actually put it somewhere here. All right, so full screen timer. So this is a hot timer now. This is not that. All right. What's the next one? What's the next one? Okay. So we're gonna try to restart everything. Then I'm gonna go to full screen, and it doesn't go away. Because I'm hovering over it. I'm gonna go away, and it disappears. And both of them disappear. Notice, and I start moving around, and it doesn't go back. And this is because this kind of stuff needs to be checked outside, right? So this kind of stuff needs to be checked outside, I believe, right? Something like this. So essentially, if you move the mouse, we always reset the hard timer. We always reset it to the beginning. So this could be even compressed further, right? So, and make it even more compact, right? So we have a full screen button. If it was clicked, we swap around full screen or not, and if it's not hovered, we keep decreasing the hard timer to the point when it becomes equal to 0 or less, and because of that it's not going to be shown. So as you can see, the all logic here in front of us, and it's not that complicated. It's not based on some sort of like idea of signals, times out, or anything like that. It's just like, it's literally like a single float that keeps track of the seconds, and every frame we just subtract it, and it's a very simple, straightforward logic. Like you can see the entirety of the logic in front of you in the form of 11 lines, right? It's just like, this is the entirety of the thing. That's what I like about the simplicity of software, right? So there we go. Okay, so it seems to be working. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So we factored out that logic out of the thing, right? Okay, so that is very progress in my opinion. So we kind of need to do a similar thing now, right? So we probably want to maybe return something that indicates that something was hovered over. But with the slider, it's a little bit more complicated, so I'm not 100% sure how exactly we're going to approach that, but we'll see. So I'm not going to return anything yet. We'll see. Now we may try to detect whether we hovering over this entire stuff or not. Do we hover over this entire stuff or not? That's a good question. If we do, all right, if we do hover over that specific button, we need to expand it, which means that we need to have some sort of a state. We need to track the state of whether we are expanded or not expanded. And this is very interesting, right? So maybe we should introduce some sort of a Boolean which answers whether it's expanded or not, right? So this is going to be initially expanded. If we hover over this thing, we expand it, right? So it automatically becomes expanded. So if hovering over, and by the way, this is very interesting situation. If we are expanded, it's a completely different boundary now. That's the thing. If it's expanded, it's a completely different boundary. So essentially, what we have to do is maybe reconsider it, right? So maybe we should literally update the boundary before trying to render it. So let me try to do it like that. So if hover over, we have expanded. Full screen, it's not a full screen button boundary, it's a volume, volume button, volume slider, I would say, volume slider boundary. Volume slider boundary. Volume slider boundary. We can just take width and maybe multiply it by 5. Right, just multiply it by 5. So that's an interesting, so it's going to be 5 icons in a row. Just 5 icons in a row. Yeah, so, and maybe because of that, we don't really have to... Yeah, this one is interesting because we still need to keep track of that. So if expanded, only then we have to multiply it. Right, so, and then we check it like that. All right, that's very interesting. because in the expanded state you just hover over a larger area, but it still should be detected as hovering over this entire thing. And interestingly, when you not hovering over, when not, you just do expanded false, which is essentially just doing expanded hover over, but with a little bit of a lag. With a little bit of a lag. You know what I mean? So expanded sort of like the hover over state from the previous frame. But anyway, so this should already work. This theoretically should already work, and let's actually see how it's going to work exactly. Alright, so let's actually put it somewhere here. So this is the thing that we need to have. So full screen, it's a slider, volume slider, boundary, there we go. So what do we have in here? I'm going to refresh it, and now when I hover over it, it expands, and it keeps expanding while I'm inside of it, and I hover out, and it collapses. Right. It's a simple logic, actually. Right. So no callback signals or anything. Like you can see, like I'm literally spelling out that logic in here. Expanding animation. We can add expanding animation, right? But first we need to implement the logic itself, right? So that guides this entire thing. Right. So I would also like to have an animation for this thing, right? But I'll think about it. So it's going to be sort of like a to-do. Right. So this is what we have, and it's kind of cool that it stays until you just go out. Interestingly, can we just get rid of the expanded? I think we can't really get rid of the expanded. So we have to. But I can get rid of the hover over, I think. Right, so I can just say expanded equals. Right. And because of that, maybe I have to make it an integer, because in the future I'm probably going to be, you know, working with all of that. So, okay, that's pretty cool. The next thing we need to do is we need to render the slider within this entire area. Right, we need to render the slider within this entire area. And how we're going to do that, we're going to say if expanded, let's render some sort of a slider. Right, so let's render some sort of a slider, and we need to have the boundary for that specific slider. Right, so we can provide, but the question is, how should we do that? So we had button size. So we know that width is that. I would like to actually say explicitly that we're taking like a 5 of the hot button size. So then I can do something like collateral rectangle. So let's do X. In terms of X, it is going to be basically volume slider boundary X, but plus a single hot button size. Right, a single one. In terms of Y, it's going to be the same as the slider boundary Y. Width is going to be actually 4 of these things, right? Because the whole thing is 5. One icon takes, one slot takes the icon. So for the slider, we have only 4, right? For the slider, we have only 4. And for the height, right? So for the height, we have 1 hot button size. So this is what we want to render in here. And if it's not expanded, we never render that specific slider, right? We never render that specific slider. So let's go ahead and just maybe create this function. Let's create this function, and it's going to accept boundary, right? So this is the boundary. It's not returning anything, but in the future, it's probably going to return something. And what we can do, we can draw a rectangle, I suppose, rect, right? So we're going to just literally draw the boundary, and let's render it as red, so it's obvious what is going on in there, right? So it's instantly obvious. So hot button size, it doesn't like that because it's supposed to be comma. Okay, sure, we can make it comma if that's your thing. Right, so, and boom, yeah, as you can see. So we do have a boundary in here. So this red thing is its own separate component, right? It is its own separate component. So we can start trying to do something in there, right? So let's actually try to do some stuff in there. First of all, let's maybe make it kind of like white, right? So let's make it white. And of course, because that's going to be probably the color that we're going to use in here. Yeah, so it became white. And maybe what we want to do actually, we want to draw a line from left to right. Right, we want to draw a line from left to right. So, and what's interesting is that this is specifically a horizontal slider, right? So maybe we should call it horse, like horse slider. So where is it? Horse slider. Because everything is going to be oriented horizontally. I don't know if we're going to have vertical sliders. Maybe we will for some sort of like equalizer or stuff like that. Right, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So draw line XC. I think that's the function we need. So let me go to tags. So yeah, it does have thickness, right? So we can thick it just like your mom. And we can specify the start point, the end point. And in terms of the thickness, I think the thickness could be like a half of the boundary, maybe half of the boundary. And let's actually make the color white. All right, so what's going to be the start position? Start position. So it's going to be boundary in terms of x, right? So in terms of x, it's going to be, of course, the boundary x, right? So it's going to be that. But in terms of y, we can say it's going to be the boundary y plus the boundary height, like half of the boundary height. So we're trying to do that, like center this entire thing, right? So you see how easy it is to center things in pure C? Right. How easy it is to center things in CSS? Can you tell me? Got you. Got you. Oh. Anyway, so what's going to be the height? Well, there's no height in here, so this is just like a start and end position. Simply start and end position, and here this is just a boundary width. So that should be more than enough. So we can just do it like that. Is it going to work? Width. So this is end position. So what's next? Okay. So this is width. Cool. Boom. All right. So this is like a half of the width of this entire stuff. So I think we need to make it a little bit thinner. What if we take like a 25 of this stuff? Right. So 25 of this stuff. Okay. So that looks good. Maybe even like 15. What about 15? I think 15 is actually perfect, right? So there you go. So there's some sort of a line in here. So I think maybe 5 icons is not enough. What about like maybe 7, and this one becomes 6? So because of that, I think there should be some sort of a parameter in here, right? So slots, right? So expanded slots. Expanded slots. So here we can do expanded slots -1. Expanded slots -1. Right, so that way we can make it a little bit longer, right? So forgot semicolon, of course. So that's a thing that may happen. So yeah, that's a little bit better. So it's a little bit longer. Now we can control this entire thing, right? So now we can control this entire thing. So that's pretty cool. So maybe hot button size. Let me find hot button size. So it's right now 50. What about 60? I think it needs to be a little bit bigger. So what about making it a tiny bit bigger? Boom. So they are bigger now. So it looks, yeah, that's much better. That's much better. So I think the ends of this thing should be a little bit to the right. So you see how this particular thing sticks to the right. I really don't like how it sticks to the right. It doesn't really look good in my opinion. Right, it should be, if we divide it by the cells, this thing should be half of the cell. It should be at the center of the cell somewhere here. And this one is, you know, correspondingly also somewhere at the center of the cell. So we can use the size of the cell as basically the boundary height of the slider. Right, so we can essentially take the boundary height, half of the boundary height, and add it to the start and subtract it from the end. and that way it will kind of align it properly, more or less. So there we go. So look at that. Look at that. Isn't that a poggers? Isn't that a woggers? So the next thing we want to do probably is draw a circle, right? So let's go ahead and draw a circle. So what kind of parameters do we have in here? So we have a center, radius, and stuff like that. So do we have other, so extended, for instance, do we have extended? What other circles do we have? Draw, circle, I think it's circle V, Emacs. Yeah, it's circle V, there we go. So center, radius, and there we go. So that's cool. So what's gonna be the radius? We can just say that the radius is gonna be half of the height, right? Because it's a radius, right? So it's gonna be fourth, and this one is gonna be white. We might as well just factor out color, right? So this is gonna be color, white. So this is the color, this is the color. There we go. And what's gonna be the center? Well, let's take this thing. Let's take this thing. So this is the center. This is the center. In terms of X, it's the start position X plus. So let's put it somewhere like in the middle. All right. So let's put it in the middle. So that means we need to take end position X minus start position X. Right, and multiply it by half. So this is going to be literally the center. In terms of Y, we can just pick this thing, and we are basically good to go, I think. We're basically good to go. So let's go ahead and take a look at this entire thing. So, I mean, come on. So, isn't it cool? Come on, come on, come on, come on. It's cool, it's freaking cool. All of that is native C, no Electron, no JavaScript bullshit, no React. Like, look how easy it is. I'm not even restarting the application. Not even fucking restarting the application. And if you telling me that after that you do need Electron, fucking skill issue, there's literally nothing you can say now to convince me otherwise. Skill issue. Anyways. So, what do we have in here? So maybe I would like to make that thing a little bit thinner. So what about like 10? What about like 10? What about 10? And yeah, that's a little bit better. So this entire thing does not really automatically highlight as we hover over this entire stuff. Maybe it should actually. Maybe it should. We'll see. We'll see. Look at the. How is that a freaking circle? Ray-san, this is not a circle. So, okay. So it's like a hexagon, or it's like how many? What the fuck? So let me see. There's some circle lines. There was a version of the draw circle that accepts the segments or something like that. Right, so we probably want to do that. Okay, guys. So interestingly, like usually slider is supposed to modify the thing, right? So it's supposed to modify some sort of a value, right? So we can accept that value as a parameter in here. And by the way, that value, I suppose, should be from 0 to 1, right? We can kind of expect that value to be from 0 to 1. And because of that, we can just put it in here, right? So this is going to be that. And if I try to recompile this entire thing, so we can have some sort of a value, right? Static float value, so which is initially going to be 0. And in here, we're going to just provide the pointer to that value, and it's going to be modifying that. So it's definitely should be provided as a parameter in here, like it's definitely, but since we explicitly say that this is a volume slider, maybe after modifying horse slider, right, if it got modified, so maybe we're going to have some sort of a state in here, and like state slider state. Right, so modified, right? So and what we'll have to do, right? So we can just do set music volume, and the volume is supposed to be from 0 to 1, right? If I'm not mistaken, right? If I'm not, it's from 0 to 1, I suppose, and we just set that value, something like this. So state modified. This is not how we do that. So you just call it like that. So we can just allocate it within this particular scope, not on the stack, in the global data section, right? But yeah. But we're not really there yet. We're not really there yet because we need to detect whether we are currently dragging this entire thing or not. Right, so we need to know whether we're currently dragging this thing or not. So I'm already streaming for almost an hour, and I ran out of my water. I was actually drinking water, not tea. So, but I really need tea to continue. So I propose to make a small break. And so I can make a cup of tea. And after the small break, we're gonna continue slapping the code. So yeah. Is that Polish? I think that's pretty freaking. I really like how it's just like, it's pretty easy. So we can even expand this entire thing, right? So this seems to be working, and then if I go that, so it just disappears. Yo, that's so cool. All right, so all right, so let's continue development this scheiße. So what we need to do, I forgot what I wanted to do actually, kind of. I think I need to detect that I'm hovering over this thing and then start dragging this shit around. So I think that's what I need to do. So let's go ahead and do that, I suppose. So horse slider, where's my horse slider? So we have, so I'm pretty sure there was some sort of function check collision, right? Check collision circle point, right? Is there something like that? Check collision point, maybe point circle. Look at that. So you provide the point, you provide the center, you provide the radius, blah blah blah. So here we can replace this entire thing with the radius, and this is going to be a radius. Boom, 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 boom. I want you in my room. So this is gonna be mouse center radius, and that's how we know that we're hovering over this thing. This is how we know that we're hovering over it. So we can even say hover over. Okay, and now if so we need to keep track of the current state of the slider. We need to keep track of the state of the slider, whether we are dragging or not. So we already keep track of the value of the slider. So I think we need to accept something like dragging, right? So because depending on the dragging, we're going to be handling that slightly differently, right? If dragging, we're going to do one thing, otherwise we're going to do the other thing. So let's actually start with not dragging. If you hover over, and is mouse pressed, mouse button pressed, mouse button, yeah, let's say pressed, specifically mouse button left, we are going into dragging mode. So, and of course we probably want to dereference this entire thing, right? Otherwise it's not going to work that well. So if we are in dragging mode, right? If we are in dragging mode and the mouse button was released, we are no longer in dragging mode. So this has become false. While we are in a dragging mode, what we want to do, we want to essentially track the position of the X of the mouse, right? So let's take X position of the mouse, right? And we want to kind of clamp it between start position and end position of the slider, right? So essentially, if x is less than start position, x is going to be start position x. It's that simple as that. It is simple as that. If x is greater than end position, it becomes equal to end position, like so. So we're clamping this entire thing. We're clamping it. All right. So after that, we want to subtract the start position, so it actually becomes from 0 to the whole width of the thing, and then we can divide this entire stuff by the width of the whole thing, and that way x becomes a value from 0 to 1, which we can assign to value. Right. So essentially we just like take the mouse position, clamp it, then offset it, then normalize it, and that's the value of x that we need. That's the value of x that we need. It's that simple, hopefully. All right, so I think that is basically it. Interestingly, we don't really need hover over anywhere else, but maybe in the future we'll need it for the rendering purposes, so I'm not going to remove this thing yet. So let's go to the compilation errors. This is not what I wanted. You didn't see anything. I was programming in Java in the break. Ignore that. Ignore that. Anyway, so let's do nob. All right, so here, so we don't have a mouse, right? So let's actually do something like vector2 mouse, get mouse position. What else do we have? Horse slider. So we have a value, right? So we have a value. So let's introduce something like dragging of false. A boom. So this one is dragging. Yo, mother flipper, yo. I think we got it. I think we actually got it. So let me refresh the entire thing. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Mother flipper. So don't we already automatically set the volume of the thing? I think we do. So yeah, that's so poggers. I can just slide this shit around. Look at that. I can just slide this shit around. Slide this shit around. Easy. Interestingly, so we keep track of the value, but does it have to be a global thing? The value has to be synchronized with the like actual master value. If we take a look at the Raylib, so somewhere raylib.h, so set music volume, right? So we're setting specifically music volume, but maybe what we want to do, we want to set the master volume. Set master volume, right? Set master volume listener specifically. So let me see. Did I just close Mutual? God fucking damn it! Like, what's the point of implementing hot reloading if I keep closing this thing? Bruv, come on. That is not acceptable in this day and age. So it doesn't really, as you can see, it doesn't work, right? So it doesn't do anything. I swear to God, Null is a fucking genius, right? So if you wanna like find more about like this kind of music from the same author, like check out the song command. Right, and all of the links are going to be in description on YouTube as well. Right. All right, so let me see. So what we gonna do? We already set music volume to 0.5. What we probably need to do, right? I think we need to set master volume to have at the initialization. So we do plug init, and so here we just set master volume to have. We just set it to have. And then in Raylib, set master volume. Okay. Can we get master? You, Raysan. Really? I'm disappointed. Why can't you? Okay, so there is a my device set master volume, but is there something like my device get master volume? So my device get. There is get master volume. Why? I suppose it was not really that important. So get volume. There's literally no get master volume. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. Literally unusable. Literally unusable. Set master volume. So essentially what I wanted to do, like I literally expanded Raylib, right? I literally expanded Raylib, and now what I should be able to do is get master volume, right? So horse slider, so this is going to be volume, get master volume, right? We get in master volume, then we modify it, and then we set master volume to this, to whatever we got in here, and we get rid of this entire thing. So this is why I like to use the Raylib, right? I just demonstrated you. I literally took the source code of Raylib and I just expanded it like a motherfucker. And let's try to rebuild it and see if it works. Like, you can read the source code, you can modify it. It's almost like it's your code. Well, I mean, I'm not claiming the ownership of the code. What I'm saying is that it's almost like a template that you can copy paste to your project and then modify and adapt to your needs. And people suggesting send a pull request. I think this is something that I should probably do. Right, so yeah, and as you can see, it started to rebuild this thing. Right, so let's actually go and fix the compilation errors. Right, so what else do we have in here? So we now have modified version of Raylib, right? Probably they expect you to track volume yourself. Maybe, but maybe it's just like was not a concern at the time. Maybe not that many people use even that functionality. Right, so, but yeah, I just modified Raylib. I just extended it literally. And it is as easy as that. Right, it is as easy as that. And I copy-pasted, I basically have a copy of the source code of Raylib inside of my repo. Right, so if I do any modifications, they're going to be just there. Right, and I can even ship my software with a modified version of Raylib. So, in my opinion, this kind of third-party dependencies are ideal. The problem with third-party dependencies quite often is that you rarely have control over them, right? But here, if you copy the third-party dependencies on, like, as part of your project, you have full control over it, and you can modify it and do like your own thing, right? So, and of course, it would be kind of nice if the Raylib just had that functionality, right? So, and I think we can make a pull request on that at some point. But let's actually see if whatever we have already works, right? And it crashed. Did it just crash? I think it just crashed. Oh yeah, because, okay, because I modified Raylib, and the previous version of Raylib was in the memory loaded, right? So that's why it's sec faulted when I try to reload it, when I try to hard reload. So it doesn't really work like that. Okay. So, you can't modify the dependency. That's dangerous. Yeah, because smarter people than you develop those dependencies. Don't even try to be as smart as them. Right? The classical argument. Do you think you are smarter than the developers of the dependencies? How fucking dare you? It's just like, you trying to understand how React works? What the fuck? You're not supposed to understand how this thing. What the fuck are you doing? Holy fucking shit! Literally an average React developer. I swear to fucking God. Holy, we have old school Russian software developers. Holy shit, how old are you? How old are you, brother? It's like 41. Okay, so yeah, because that's roughly how I see it. It's such an old Russian software development meme. Holy shit, I forgot about it and you just reminded me about it. It's like a meme from a different world. What the fuck? Yo, наш человек. All right, so I keep it alive. Teaching young is nice. Doing God's job. All right. So does it work? Okay, so this is half, right? So this is half, and we can just like listen to this thing. Oh shit. So, okay, we noticed a little bit of the UX problem. So when you go outside, it disappears. So we need to keep track. We need to keep track whether this thing is currently dragging or not. So, and if it's currently dragging, we should stay in the expanded state. Right. So there's a little bit more logic involved in here. Okay. Okay. We need the animation of the bar expanding. Okay, I'll add to do for that, right? So it would be nice to have some sort of animation. And it's not even that difficult to add, I think. All right, so it's essentially just keeping track of the state of the animation within the volume slider, right? So it's going to be just another static variable in here, right? Just another static variable in here. Something like static float expanding. And it's going to be a simple interpolator from 0 to 1, a simple interpolator from 0 to 1. And yeah, it's just like you have an access to delta time in here, get frame time, and you just expand it. And you use that to render the bar, and you can animate it quite nicely. You can even add a little bit of easing to that, but I don't think we can do it right now. All right, so, but let me actually do it like this. We need to know whether we, well, I mean, we already know whether we're dragging or not. So that's the thing. So where do we update expanding? Okay, so when you are inside of the boundaries, so how can we do all of that? If we are currently expanded, and not dragging, this becomes true, right? This becomes the thing. So we expand it, not dragging. So expansion depends on whether we are inside of the boundary or not. So otherwise, this thing always depends on that stuff. Can I compress that logic somehow? Probably can, but my brain cannot just right away do that. And of course, we can compress these two things. Who said we can't? Because why not? So if expanded, volume signed the boundary width is gonna be a bit bigger, right? So we're just expanding this entire stuff. And then if we're not dragging, whether it's expanded or not will depend. Dragging or collision. Yeah, maybe that. So let's actually go back. So that's a good idea, actually. Expanded, dragging, or check collision. Yeah, it's not bad. But probably want to do it like this. Right, so we first want to check for the expansion before we start using expanding. Right, I think that makes sense. So and then, okay. Alrighty. Okay. All right. Yeah, it was not a good idea. I just remembered why I organized my code like that. Thank you. Just remembered. All right. And yep. That's cool. It's pretty cool. And if I go outside, it's totally fine. And yep. Cool. Alrighty, so I suppose what we need to do, we need to make a pull request. So let's actually see how easy it is to make a pull request to Raylib. Maybe we already have that function in there. Maybe we already have that function in there. Okay, so I'm taking the latest version. So this is the master version. This is the master version. Can I close this bullshit from GitHub? I literally don't care. It doesn't even work that well, to be fair, in my opinion. So get master volume. Set. So you can set the master volume, but you can't really get the master volume. Okay. So let's go ahead and try to, you know, maybe fork that. I'm not going to say anything. And so let's just fork it. Create a new fork. So this is how we fork these days. I think I want to fork it into Tsoding. Simple and easy to use library to enjoy. All right. GitHub Copilot. Piloting the Coke. So where I want to actually put this entire thing? So fork. Let's put it here. And can I? Do I have to clone the entire thing if I want to push things? Can I push into a shallow clone? Does anybody remember? Right, clone depth 1. And let's see if it's going to work. Why aren't you using the GF CLI? You sound like this React devs. Like you must use Vite. You must use what is that? There is Git. Listen. Git version control system, right? Git, and there is a website that hosts Git. So to use the Git hosting, you use Git. That's it. Simple as that. It's just like simple as that. There's nothing to discuss. Okay. So if I was using SVN hosting, I would be using SVN. I'm using Git hosting. I'm using Git. Easy. All right. So let me see. So what do we have in here? Can I simply copy paste? I think if I copy paste the previous versions, they're gonna overwrite too much, because I'm pretty sure they edit a lot of things already, right? So they edit a lot of things. So this is our audio and the Raylib. All right. So what is that? So this is fork Raylib, and this is my Raylib. 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 So I'm gonna just copy paste. Let's replace this entire thing, and our audio. Where is our audio? I'm gonna copy paste it and replace it. Okay, so let's take a look at what we got. Let's take a look at the diffs, and they must be huge. I'm gonna predict that okay, so yeah. Because I'm using the released version, and this is literally master, right? So because of that, it's just like it's not particularly great idea to do it like that. Right, and obviously, yeah, that's not great. So let's not do that, I suppose. Let's not do that. So let's do a slightly different thing. Raylib, and put it in here. So set master volume, right? So set master volume, and here we can do get master volume void get master volume listener. There we go. And then we can go to our audio, get master, set master volume, set master volume, get master volume, get float. We may put this thing in here, and then maybe we can initialize that, doesn't really matter. Get, and then we simply return the volume. It's as simple as that. Is there any way for us to check how this entire thing... We can simply try to just use build. Or maybe I can just do makefile. Do we have makefile in here? Okay, so there is no makefiles in here, but there is a makefile inside of here, so I can try to do that. Alright, so let's see. God dang, how do you do stuff fast like that? What exactly, what are you talking about? Navigating? It's just Control F? Or what? So what I was doing is I was using Control F, Control C, Control V. So that's the only things I was using. So I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't even using any special features of text editors. Don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. So is there any contributing rules, right? So before contributing, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. I react very harshly when people tell me what to do in my projects, and rightfully so, because these are my projects. I do whatever the fuck I want with my project. Don't tell me what to do. On the contrary, I believe if you come to somebody else's project, you should respect their rules. You should respect what they do in their project, because who the fuck are you to tell them what to do? Because of that, before contributing, let's read contribution rules. Let's respect the place. This is very important. Right, so there's some sort of conventions. I don't care. Right. Hello, contributors. Welcome to Raylib. Do you enjoy Raylib and want to contribute? Nice. You can help with following points: C programming, documentation, testing. Raylib philosophy. Raylib is a tool to enjoy video games. Programming every function in Raylib is designed as a mini tutorial on itself. Raylib is simple and easy to use. Try to keep it compact with a small set of functions. If a function is too complex, better not include it. I think our function is very simple. So yeah, I think it's fine. Raylib is open source and free. Educators and institutions can use this tool to teach video games programming completely free. Right, so C code conventions, despite being written in C, Raylib does not follow the standard Hungarian notations for C. I disagree that it is standard. In the Microsoft mind, maybe it is. But I mean, like, Microsoft programmers is such a minority among C programmers. Like, I wouldn't say such a strong word as a standard, right? It's a Microsoft thing. It's not. Tell that to Unix developers and run away. Anyway, so opening a new issue. Okay, so sending pull requests. So this is what we're interested in. Make sure that PR description clearly describes the problem and solution. Include the relevant issue number if applicable. Don't send big pull requests. Okay, so that checks out. Our pull request is very small. Lots of change lists, they're difficult to review. It's better to send small pull requests one at a time. I agree with that. Like, I also don't like to read big pull requests. If you need to make a big, like if you want to implement a big feature, first make sure that the initial developer wants that big feature in their project, because they're going to be supporting it after you've done with it, right? First of all, make sure that they actually want that big feature. And once you agreed upon that big feature, it's better to actually develop it incrementally, sending small incremental pull requests that are easy to review, not a huge one that nobody's going to review, right? So that's very important. Verify that changes don't break the build, at least on Windows platform. So I checked it on Linux, so maybe that's fine. As many platforms where you can test it, the better, but don't worry if you cannot test all the platforms. I guess that's it. If that's the contribution rules, I think we can try to... I accidentally clicked this thing, I didn't mean to click it, so whatever. So there's not that many sort of like rules on how to name the branches or anything like that. So I think I can just like go ahead and simply add this thing. So let's create a branch called get master volume. Right, so get master volume. So if we take a look at the history, all right, if we take a look at the history, so there's a master. Oh, shoot. So I didn't have the full history, unfortunately. So let's take, I want to take a look at the history and the convention and stuff like that. So you see they're marking things with these brackets, so core and some other stuff. So our audio, do they do that? Yeah, I think there is our text. Yeah, so they basically mark in the module where they implement this entire thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Our audio implement get master volume. It feels a little unfinished when you can set master volume but can't really get it. So to close the symmetry, here is the get master volume implementation. Right. Is this how we spell symmetry? I think this is how we spell symmetry. So it feels a little unfinished when you can set master but can't really get it. So to close the symmetry, to finish the symmetry, here is the get master volume implementation, right? So let's just try to push that into the origin. Oh shit, to complete. Okay, so luckily, so what was that? So I pushed it in here. Let's try to amend that to complete. All right, so I'm gonna do force push. I'm force pushing into my own fork, so that's fine. Right, so I'm force pushing into my own fork, so don't worry about it. Reject it. Okay, it's too late. So there's probably some sort of rule set for this thing to not be able to push this thing anywhere. So whatever. Compare and pull request. So implement get master volume. By the way, I think I need to check. Has anybody actually discussed get master volume? Because maybe there was some oh my god, this is so slow, holy shit. Okay, nobody ever discussed that, so that's fine. It feels a little unfinished when... Okay, so let's just create a pull request. There we go. So let's wait for the continuous integration. Well, I mean, yeah, these days the author of the repo has to approve the continuous integration. You guys know why? You guys know why the author must first approve the continuous integration before you can do that? So it was some time ago, but yeah, Bitcoin mining, it's insane. Like the fact that nobody's thought about it, like it's so unexpected, right? So whoever came up with this idea that forced GitHub to implement this feature is a freaking genius, right? Whoever first came up with it, it's fucking genius. So essentially, through a pull request, you can modify the .github files, right? So you can modify the .github files in here. So these YAML things, workflows and stuff like that. And whatever you put in there is going to be automatically executed on the instances of the CI. So what people started to do, some Bitcoin miners, they started to inject like mining code in there and started to just randomly submit pull request and mine shit ton of Bitcoins. Like, holy fuck. So they basically hijacked the entire like infrastructure of Microsoft, of GitHub specifically, to just mine Bitcoins. It was insane. Right, so, and this is basically what they had to do. It's so funny, actually. It is actually genius. Like, I can respect the hustle. Like, seriously, it's so fucking cool. It is bad, right? And it should not be allowed, but at least we can respect the creativity of the people who came up with this shit. How they did get discarded must be not be genius. Well, when you start doing that at scale, it becomes kind of obvious. So yeah, wrong but respectable. Yeah, exactly. Oh, look at that! 34. Isn't that bulk? Isn't that bulk? I think it's pretty freaking bulk. Holy shit! So let's make sure that everything's fine in here. Right, everything seems to be fine. Yusu. And basically, yeah, so we've got that. So here's the interesting thing. I could try to commit this thing and my own Raylib implementation. But here's the thing. According to the license of Raylib, and you need to respect the license. You need to respect the license. If the license says that you can do whatever you want with the code, but you always must include the name of the original author, you should follow that, and you should not create a separate repo with my code and strip off my name. You should not do that because that's against the license. And yeah, the license is very important. So, and here, one of the clauses of the license, altered source code versions must be plainly marked as such and must not be misrepresented as being the original software. Right. So, because this thing is not really merged yet, and I'm gonna commit that, that means I have a modified version of Raylib. So what I probably need to do, I think what's fair to do in this regard, is to at least mark that this contains modification, that, and that, right? So here I have a README, which actually explains what is going on here. So here's the original Raylib 4.5, source code downloaded from here, stripped of everything except license and SRC. No other modifications were applied so far. Right, so this is the modification that I've done, and I plainly stated so. Right, so I plainly stated what exactly I did to the source code. So what I think I need to now do, I need to say that I also have this pull request applied. Right, I also have this pull request applied. So applied patches, like this. So I think that's fair, right? So I think that's fair. Applied patches. So because this is the release source code, right? This is the release source code. And I basically, I submitted this patch to the master, but for myself, I kind of backported it to the release 4.5, right? I think the next release of Raylib is not there yet, right? It's not there yet. But as soon as it will be there, I think I'm gonna just replace it in the same way as I did with 4.5, right? So yeah, so it's still 4.5. So I think this is how we're gonna go with all of that. So let me see what we need to do. I think I can right away just commit whatever I already have in here. Implement volume slider without icons, right? So that's what we have. So it's a volume slider without any icons. Do we have any time to implement the icons? We probably could. We probably could implement, you know, the icons, but I need to make a small break for that. Will I have time? Nah, I think I already don't have time to do that. So I'm gonna do the icons already off screen. I already do icons off screen. So the result of today's stream is actually quite cool, I think. Right, so we have that. So there's no volume, and I can control this kind of thing. So that's pretty cool. So that works in a full screen as well. Right, and all of these things are connected. So let's actually make it a little bit lower. So all of these things are connected. So, and the idle thing also is applicable. Okay, so that's really cool. All right. So I guess that's it for today. Thanks everyone who's watching me right now. I really appreciate that. Have a good one, and I see you all on the next recreation programming session with Mr. Azuzin. I love you all.